Thanks, Andrew. I hope that you got some feeling about Calhoun just arriving here tonight. It's a pretty lively place. It's not an accident. It doesn't just happen. And I hope after I talk for about 20 minutes, you'll have somewhat of a better idea of how this kind of a community actually comes to pass. I'm doing something, and I have to confess, that is a bit of a rehearsal, because in 2 days I'm going to be speaking at a conference in London, and I thought, what better opportunity to try something out than on a bunch of innocent people who have to pretend they like it anyway. Although I realized I could be in big trouble in London, where nobody's trying to get into anything, that they'll feel perfectly free to boo or to disagree with me. But at any rate, I'm going to try in 20 minutes to describe to you very briefly what I think it means to be well-educated, because that's the topic that I and others were invited to address at a conference in England. And in doing that, you will both hear explicitly and also infer many things about Calhoun and our approach to education. But I want to start by asking you a couple of things, just quickly. How many of you are here in significant part because you understand that Calhoun claims to be a progressive school? The majority of you. How many of you have the faintest idea what that means? You can laugh, it's okay. I ask that question because very often people vaguely understand that progressive means that it's probably not a military academy, and that the understanding doesn't go a whole lot deeper than that, just a sense that it is a different kind of school. And I hope, again, that will become a little clearer to you over the next few minutes. One more bit of asking you to give me something back, and here it may be a little bit risky, but I'll try anyway. I'd like you, without thinking too hard, to think about a quality that you admire in human beings that you would like to see developed in your child, or for you who are not children anymore, who are applying particularly to the high school, qualities that you hope to continue developing in yourself. Things like curiosity. But anybody think of a quality that you really admire in other people that you hope will be further developed? Anyone?
Honor system.
Everybody listen. Anybody else?
Decency.
Decency.
Compassion.
Compassion. Good. Anything else?
Self-starter.
Self-starter.
Critical thinking.
Critical thinking.
Honesty.
Honesty.
Responsibility.
Responsibility.
Passion.
Passion.
Happy.
Happy.
Kindness.
Kindness. A little disappointed nobody said humor yet.
Humor.
Thank you. This, by the way, is what I'm going to do with people in London, is just sort of tell them what to say so that I can feel good about it. Okay, well, I'll stop then, because I really am trying to compact this into 20 minutes. But on this occasion and every other occasion where I ask a group of, reasonably thoughtful adults, and here with many reasonably thoughtful young students, to describe the things that they care about, it's almost inevitably the same list. Some of them didn't come out this time, but people say compassion, passion, critical thinking, integrity, decency, kindness, humor, creativity. The list is almost invariably those kinds of things. Does that surprise anybody? Probably not. It surprises me that we all know those things about what we admire in other people and what we hope to see developed in our children, and then we send our children to schools that don't intentionally do any of those things at all. In fact, I would argue many schools, public and private, suppress a great many of those qualities. And I would argue, although this is not a political speech, that the public educational system in its current iteration actually inhibits the development of most of the qualities that you all just described as the most important ones in humans. So in my attempt to describe what I think it means to be well-educated, I'm simply going to defer to what you said, because I think being well-educated means all of those things, perhaps with a little more elaboration, a little more richness, but it means to be able to think critically, to be kind, to understand the world that you live in, to have a sense of compassion, to have passion for things, to be able to think critically, to have original thoughts. All of those things comprise in the aggregate what it means to be well educated. But the interesting thing is that there are two aspects of human development that are critically important to coming out that way that are by and large ignored in schools. And I'm going to talk about them in two separate rounds. One is biological and the other is psychological, emotional, and developmental, sort of packing all of that together. From a biological point of view, at this point in our understanding of human development, I think in the crudest way that it is unassailably true that the development of those qualities of critical thinking and judgment and kindness and compassion and understanding the world around you requires young people to be exposed to a very rich and active sensory environment. So that means that from birth onward, children, and I don't mean to diminish you 8th graders in the room and call you little kids, but children from birth on should be immersed in a sensory environment that includes singing and dancing and building magnificent towers and smelling things, manipulating physical objects. All of the senses should be brought into play, not because it makes school more fun, which it certainly does, but because that is the stuff of early brain development, which is a precondition for everything that follows, including the kind of high-level, abstract intellectual work that makes for great scholarship later in life. So if you'll buy my premise, which I am stating with a certain amount of confidence, that having this kind of rich environment is a precondition for higher learning, then you have to ask yourself if a good school can possibly be a place which is mostly silent, where children are passive, where they're expected to sit still at a desk and listen to the very dull drone of a teacher dispensing wisdom from the front of the classroom. So if you buy my premise, which I think is supported by what we know about brain biology and cognitive science, then you have to question whether schools that are engaged in stern, rigorous, here I'll throw in my favorite quip, that it's no accident that the word rigor is most often paired with the word mortis. But what is a precondition is clearly this kind of a rich sensory environment. So children in the early years of school and in home should be dancing and playing and singing and doing joyful things, not because it's fun, but because it builds neural pathways that then allow them to do things later on. Now, I want to give you one tantalizing bit of information to think about. I'm going to go further and say that in the development of these kind of neural pathways in the brain, that the kind of rote drill and kill practices that are the stuff of public education policy and done in too many independent schools not only don't create those kind of neural pathways, but I'll make the argument that they inhibit the development of those neural pathways.